I'll invite the three panelists to come up on stage. Chris, Stephen, and Drew. And as they come up, I will give a very quick introduction of each one of them. Hey, Drew. On my extreme left is Chris Kelso, who serves on the Ambassadors Council of Opportunity International. Chris is also an entrepreneur and an investor who leads the Kelso Group, a technology and management consulting firm. Chris is a mentor at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center and with the Jumpstart Foundry, a startup accelerator program. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
Next to Chris is Reverend Stephen Stanley. We all know him as Steve. And Steve has served as a governor here at Opportunity International for many, many years. Steve is a retired pastor, and he volunteers in many community projects, including job training, community development, and Habitat for Humanity. And next to Steve is Drew Smith. Drew serves on Opportunity's Ambassadors Council as well. He's a venture capitalist and has invested in several Missouri manufacturing companies. A family mission trip to Mexico back in 1988 revealed poverty to him in a new light. And ever since then, Drew has been focused on Christian ministries ranging from children's homes to schools and economic development. So please join me in welcoming all three of them. So we'll just have a discussion. It's going to be very interactive. We'll take a few minutes just to focus on, during this summit, we have discussed creating momentum. And today we would like to focus on how we create that momentum personally in our lives through core values, living a life of purpose and faith. Now, we all know that creating momentum in our lives means basically increasing things that move us forward and decreasing those that hold us back, so that we can ultimately live a life of purpose. Sounds easy, right? We all know that living a life of purpose and desire is not always easy. We have habits, repeat cycles to overcome, but by creating momentum, we can move past those and move towards the life that we want, which truly is a life of purpose. So let's just take time, and if each of you could share with us, what does that mean? What does a life of purpose mean to you? Drew, you want to start?
I'll keep it real simple. I'm a very visual person, and I'm a get-to-the-point kind of guy. So rather than giving you 12 great values in life, I'm just going to tell you there's one core question in my mind. And it starts with standing before Christ. And two questions are asked. You know me? And what'd you do about it? And then that translates into my personal life and into what am I doing for my kids and my community? And I take that in the context of when I'm faced with a significant challenge, and 90% of our challenges are relational. I'm sure everyone would acknowledge that most of the time we're struggling with issues of people. I have to envision myself standing before Christ as he's nailed to the cross. He's got an hour left to live, and I want to plead some stupid case about why I can't get along with some guy. And I'm either hearing him say, really? Or I'm hoping he's going to say, hop on the cross next to me. In the context of, thank you for reminding me of the verse, Romans 12. Live a life that's a holy sacrifice.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, I really appreciate the emphasis. We've heard it this morning on relationship, and relationship with Christ and relationship with other people. And I think of with the relationships we have in opportunity, and with people here that we've gotten to know, and people across the sea. It is truly amazing, and I just love what opportunity stands for, in that because it identifies with my own purpose for life. And you get another minister up here, I'm sorry, another Bible verse, but I mean, when we are called to emulate the Good Samaritan, we respond to Christ's call to love and serve the poor, and we emulate the Good Samaritan who crossed some bridges to do that. I believe that that's my call, my purpose in life. I think I'm cutting in and out a little bit, but that Jesus told that story of the Good Samaritan when he was asked in a discussion about what is the purpose in life. And it was love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. It's a relationship. Love your neighbor as yourself. And it's probably fitting that it was an attorney that asked him the question, but the scripture says, and who is my neighbor? Well, I believe life is the school for learning the answer to that question. It's discovering who my neighbor truly is. And that's the beautiful thing about opportunity. What a great world we live in. 7.3 billion people. We have wonderful opportunities. The world's never been smaller and yet greater, fuller. And we can reach out and discover neighbors all around. And that's what life for me is about.
Thank you. Chris, you want to share about what a life of purpose has meant to you personally?
Yeah, I have 3 elementary age children, and I spend a lot of time talking to them about purpose. And it's conversations like, the couch is not a trampoline. The dining room table is not a jungle gym, right? The floor is not your clothes hamper. That things have a purpose, things have a reason for being and a use. And while I agree that God, we share a purpose as Christians, as believers, as people that are called by God to minister to others. I think God also made us each unique, and we have a unique purpose that is a combination of our interests and our passions, our gifts and our skills, and a need in the world. And where those 3 things intersect, that's a purpose that God's made us for. I love the way Paul that Paul described for us, not a predestined or predetermined plan, but a purpose that is crafted from what we are and who we are, and the experiences, the life that we've had, everything God drives together and brings into a purpose. You know, the scripture in Romans 8:28 says he causes all things to work together for. It doesn't say he causes all things. He causes all things to work together for good. And I think that's how our lives come to a purpose.
So Steve, as you have sought to live a life of purpose, how have you approached building your own core values? Because on the surface, the concept of core values sounds very easy to understand, because really most of us, at the core of who we are, we all want to be good people, right? But it is more challenging than that. So can you share a little bit about how you personally have gone about building your own core values?
Well, I haven't done a very good job, I would say. How do you build core values? Practice. It's so easy to list them and to put them up, and there it can be a great guide, but they can also be pretentious, self-congratulatory. What a great person I am, I've got these values, but they're really put out, in our lives. And I think for me as a person of faith, the ultimate reality is the scripture from last Sunday in church about Christ emptying himself. He practiced solidarity with humanity. He came and lived the life of a servant, even to death, and God raised him up. I mean, that's That's the founding narrative of my faith. And Paul, when he quotes that great hymn, ancient Christian hymn, he follows it up by saying, "Follow after me and work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." I mean, so that means I don't have all the answers. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I'm just trying to even ask the right questions. But it does mean, I think the key is not the fear and the trembling, it's the work. Because we have work to do. It's the same word for energy. You know, that's our response to the narrative that we believe, that gives life purpose. And so my core values come out of that work. And I just put it in practice. And the last part of that is it's because God is at work within us, you know, right here on earth. So
I love the word work you put in there because I guess I have to put it into application. I'm an engineer, so I got to say it work. I'm not so big on pasting, you know, what my core values are, but there's a great line about a core value of character. It says, "Character untested is no character at all." We have no value until it's tested. And I think about my kids. Each of my kids, I taught Sunday school in their class until they fired me, which is usually about 12 years old. And then I'm fired, I'm thinking for life, but usually about first semester of college, they start liking me again. But, so I'm angst over this, and my wife goes, "Wait a minute, honey. Do you realize what they tell your friends, her friends, when they ask, 'What does your father do?'"
What do they say?
And the point being, I can talk about Jesus all day long, but when I take them on an opportunity insight trip, and they see the work that's going on behalf of the poor of the world, and they go back to school, and they make a presentation in a class, unbeknownst to me, about what they learned on the ground from seeing what their father does with this group called Opportunity. To me, that's the testing of real value. That's where their values are being instilled.
And that is priceless. That's
Yes.
a priceless teaching
Yes.
that you impact in their lives. Chris, how has that process played out in your own life?
You know, I think one misunderstanding or misconception of core values is that it's some ideal that you adopt. Like you go decide what your core values are and then start living them out. I think your core values are what drive you, and that your actions don't determine your core values, they reflect your core values.
Yeah. Amen.
Right? And so in my life, it has been a process of both seeking to become the best version of me that I can be, not trying to be someone else, not trying to adopt another ideal of what is the best values or the best life to live, but seeking both who am I uniquely made to be and what does God want to see come out of me, and then asking Him to change the parts of me that don't reflect properly the values that He wants me to live out.
So, Steve, how do you integrate the core values into every fabric of your life, in your family, your church, your community, your philanthropic work, your volunteering work that you're doing around your community and in the church? How do you integrate those values into those aspects of your life? Can you just unpack a little bit of that process?
I hope the core values come out. I mean, it's like the chicken and the egg. I mean, we are changed. We've heard the word transformation a lot. We are transformed as we engage the community, as we volunteer or engage our kids, and it's an opportunity for these core values that we believe to mature in us, and we go forward. As Ray mentioned, I'm another pastor. I remember signing up for a missions trip, and we were building something, and they put, what skills do you have? And I'm just a pastor. I didn't have anything to put on the line. I mean, it was. I marvel at entrepreneurs that can put things together and attract things and empower people, and we do that in ministry with people as well. But the opportunity that we have to work with people sometimes does not mean that we can build a factory or build a large company. I mean, I pastored in a town that was on kind of the backside of American economy, and so people were struggling to pay their bills, and these were the people that we lived with, we worshiped with, we fellowshiped with, and so we had that experience, and we ministered, and core values were a part of that. Well, on the other side of it, Emmy and I had, because of family ownership in a large corporation, we had income, and we were able to invest in the local community, but primarily in opportunity, and have been able to do that because we're able to invest in people, and so that's a part of our core values as well. So it happens locally, but it also can happen. Who is my neighbor across the sea, and it happens a long ways away.
Drew, you want to add on to that?
Sure, and I'm going to be quick because I can tell on the faces of the people in this room there's a burning question they have, and it's, when do I get to go home? So I want to try to put an application in your question, and how is it applied in my life? I have to say that my relationship with opportunity has given me a PhD in strategic thinking about how to impact the poor of this world, and it's helped me create a personal mission statement that says, I come alongside Christian organizations that are focused on serving the poor. I can add the greatest value by increasing their strategic footprint and finding models of support outside of traditional donation. How does that relate? Well, I spent time since 2000 with Opportunity on 3 different continents, seeing their work, being engaged in it, and I'm now engaged on a 4th continent, which is the toughest culture I've seen yet, which is the hardest place to get to, which is downtown St. Louis. And I've taken principles that I've learned from Opportunity, and a couple of key strategic principles they discovered is, one, just like any entrepreneur, how to identify the underutilized asset and leverage it. And 2, critical, how to crack the cultural code. So in the developing world, they identified the underutilized asset is women, that it's a matriarchal society, women are unempowered. In parallel to that, the work I'm doing in downtown St. Louis, we've created a nonprofit that focuses on working alongside churches, taking men who are disciples, helping empower them to become whole men of God, and using the workplace as a classroom. Because in that workplace, all the issues that they have in life bubble to the surface and have to get dealt with. So we've created businesses that employ these guys with the purpose of teaching them. And I want to get into all that detail. I'm not trying to sell that. I'm just trying to sell the point of the significant strategic value that's possessed in this room about how to solve problems like that I've learned from Opportunity. And the really cool thing is cracking the cultural code. In this country, what's the issue? Well, the issue is also maternal society, matriarchal society in our inner cities and generational poverty, but it's the men who are the economically distant and unempowered. And we identify that as the underutilized asset that we can leverage. And if we can help them become whole men of God, they can then be the transformations of change within their own community that's desperately needed. I, as the white guy, can't do that, but they sure can. And
That is powerful. Thank you.
thank you. The point being, it's the values and principles I learned from Opportunity that I've been able to translate into this context, this 4th continent, that has been crucial to having any kind of impact.
Thank you. Chris, can you share with us how that has played out in your own life, in the business, family, and philanthropy work?
For one thing, I'm not a fan of the, I think, ill-conceived phrase work-life balance. And I think that my biggest problem with that term is that it implies that work and life are sort of fundamentally at odds with one another. And you have to figure out how to juggle both. And in my view, in my opinion, I just have one life. I don't have a professional life and a spiritual life and a family life and a social life, and I just have a life. And so my values and my purpose has to be integrated into every aspect and every area of my life. And those things work in conjunction, not in competition with one another. And so, I look for work that has purpose. I look for, and having said that, not every person can go and work for a nonprofit or go and pursue a profession that also has the kind of impact directly. But if you can understand that the work you do enables you to have an impact, if you can look for ways to tie the two together, my title of entrepreneur, as overused as I think that word is sometimes, but the fact that I'm an entrepreneur, that I'm a business owner, gives me a platform to talk about Opportunity International and the great work that they're doing. It also puts me in contact with investors and entrepreneurs and people with whom the work of Opportunity resonates. And so, though my work day to day and the way I make money is not necessarily a missional work or purpose, I integrate the things that I care about and the impact that I can have into the work that I do. And I take the same approach with my social life, with my spiritual life, with my family, and those sort of things.
Okay. So in closing, I think each of you has traveled to see our work and visit with our clients and spend time with them. I'd like for you to just share a story, either of a client or a staff member that you interacted with or you met, that just jumped out to you as embodying one of the core values of Opportunity International, which for those of us who may not know, it is the acronym CHRIST. C for Christ-centeredness, H for humility, R for respect, I for integrity, S, stewardship, and T for transformation. So just share a story that just comes to mind of a client or staff member.
Well, it was the very first trust bank I ever visited. It was in 2000. I was in Honduras in a distant farming community that was devastated by Hurricane Mitch. I came with a mission group who had the same philosophy as Opportunity. These people received no aid. They were naked, living in the jungle, and this group's approach was, we'll help you build a village, but we'll not do it for you. We'll show you how to do it. First, we're going to lift up a pastor. We're going to lift up leaders. We're then going to show you how to make these concrete blocks and so forth. Well, we got 2 years into this and realized subsistence farming wasn't going to cut it for these people. And since I had heard the word microenterprise, I was in charge, and back then that's what you call it. And I found Opportunity, and they said, let us explain it to you. We're going to go to this trust group in Tegucigalpa, the capital. And we sat there with this group of women and one man, and afterwards, I don't know why I came up with this question, but I ask it now of every trust group. What has it meant to you to be a part of this? And every one of these women stood up proudly. You could tell they've been through multiple, as you know, after they've been through multiple loan cycles, their shoulders get higher and their eyes lift higher. And they all said two things. Now we can eat, and now my children can be educated. But then the last one stood up, and she was very diminutive. She was the smallest of the group and the quietest, and I could hardly hear her. She said, I was born poor. I was always told I'd never amount to anything. But then I was married, and life seemed good. I had 3 children. And then my husband ran off with another woman. I was left on the street with my kids for years, begging. And then she said, and you could just see her get a little bit taller and a little bit louder as the story went on. She said, but Maria invited me into the trust bank. And she showed us, the group showed me, how I could take the little activity I was doing and turn it into real enterprise. And this woman gets louder and louder. And then she says, and now, when my children are sick, I can reach into my profits and buy medicine. And then she almost yelled at me and said, and now I don't have to hold my hand out to anyone.
Transformation.
Well,
Empowerment.
that day 2 people were transformed. She
Drew.
and I.
Yes. Amen. Thank you for sharing. Chris, you want to go next?
Yeah, at sort of the other end of the spectrum, the client stories and seeing them on the ground is very impactful. I also, in Colombia, have been a couple of times and have spent time in the national office and seen the operation on the business side and the stewardship aspect, which again is one of the core values. And that bank is as well run as any for-profit, shareholder-driven bank that I know of. And the interesting thing to me is the blend of the bank president there will tell you absolutely that the number one goal is transformation and impact on people's lives. But they don't do that at the expense of poor stewardship. The bank is solvent, is cash flow positive as of just a few weeks ago, and growing and poised to really expand their impact. And they're taking a very sustainable, high stewardship approach to building what, at the end of the day, is a ministry. And I love that combination.
So you saw the embodiment of stewardship and transformation.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Steve.
You know, it's truly amazing that God goes before us before we get there. I mean, it's not we're bringing God. I mean, we are discovering Him, that He is way ahead of us. And Emmy and I were on our trip to Malawi, and going. I'll never forget going into the lobby in Lilongwe in the OIBM. It was dusty, dirty, smelly, busy. They started the biometrics, and people were checking in. There was a long line, and it was just total chaos, except the tellers were up there serving the people. And it was just awesome to see the People's Bank. And you realize this is holy ground. And it was just amazing. And on that eyewitness trip, on that Friday, we were back in that lobby with Francis Pelicamoyo and the bank staff. We got to share in devotions with them. And you realize why it's holy ground. Do you believe banks can be holy ground, and that they can be used for holy purpose? And that was just spoke powerfully.
And I love 2 doors down is the biggest commercial bank in Malawi, and the place is empty. There's 2 armed guards outside and nobody around.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a joy to spend time with you and have a conversation. And thank you for your involvement in the work of Opportunity International. Thank you.
Thank you.